The pro-Russia alt media portrays Saddam as the one responsible for the Iraq-Iran war, and I used to believe that. Let's investigate that claim.
مسئله جنگ واقعش این است که او اولی که انقلاب شد ما شعارهایی تندم دادیم بعضیا صدور انقلاب و امروز ایران و فردا عراق و پس فردا کجا و از این شعارهای تند سبب شد کشورهای مجاور وحشت بکنم. من رفتم خدمت مرحوم آیت الله خمینی تو همین منزل مقابل منزلمون که منزل آقای یزدی بود، اینجا خدمت ایشون عرض کردم همیشه در دنیا رسمه یک کشوری که انقلاب میشه هیئت‌های حسن نیت میفرستن برای کشورهای مجاور و به کشورهای مجاور حالی میکنن که ما با شما کار نداریم و سوابقمون و روابطمون همونجور بوده هست و اینا و ما متاسفانه این کار رو نکردیم و این کار هر چه زودتر بکنیم بهتر، برای که الان صدام داره زمزمه جنگ میکنه و او قرارداد الجزایر رو پاره کرده اینا، بنابراین هر چه زودتر جلوی این معنا گرفته بشه. که وقت ایشون فرمودن که نه این حرفات چیزه، گفتم که آقا ما نمیتونیم دور کشورمون دیوار بکشیم، بالاخره میخوایم با کشورهای همسایه روابط داشته باشیم. ایشون فرمودن نه خیر ما میخوایم دور کشورمون دیوار بکشیم.
That was Hussein Ali Montazeri, the Deputy Supreme Leader of Iran during the war. If you're still not convinced, listen to Ruhollah Khomeini himself.
هم خود صدام حسین به اثر حکم شرعی کافر است و هم این طرفدار کفار. باید ملت عراق بداند که این آدم خطرناکی است برای ملت عراق و خطرش بر ملت عراق زیاد است و الا به ملت ما که اون نمیتوند صدمه بزنه. او به ملت عراق خطرناک است و ملت عراق باید با تمام قوا کوشش کنند که این شخص فاسد را از بین ببرند و این جمعیتی که برخلاف اسلام و برخلاف مصالح اسلام و قرآن دارن عمل میکنند اونها را از بین ببرند. شما هم همین کار را بکنید که ارتش ایران نسبت به شاه سابق کردند، همینطوری که اونها رها کردن او را و متصل شدن به ملت و سربازها فرار کردن از پادگانها و متصل شدن به ملت. شما هم فرار کنید و قوای خودتون را صرف این کنید که این جرثومه فساد را از بین ببرید. خدا به شما تأیید میکند اگر چنانچه قیام کنید و این شخص را از بین ببرید و یکی را خودتون به جای او بگذارید. ما هم کمک شما هستیم در این که از خود شما، از ملت شما یک نفر اداره کند حکومت عراق را و این آدمی که برخلاف اسلام و برخلاف مصالح اسلام مشغول مفسده شده است این فاسد را از بین ببرید، با ملت همراه بشید. ملت عراق هرگز با صدام حسین موافق نیست، یک روز هم موافقت ندارد. ملت عراق با اسلام موافق است. کسی که با اسلام موافق است، کسی که کتاب او قرآن است، کسی که کعبه قبله اوست، نمیشد با یک آدم کافری که در پناه کفار دارد زندگی میکند و در پناه کارتر و امثال کارتر دارد به حیات خودش ادامه میداد، نمیشد با این همراهی بکنیم. من به اونها سفارش میکنم به ارتش عراق که اگر میتوانند قیام کنند بر ضد این آدم و این آدم را از بین ببرند و خودشون جانشین او بشن و ما هم تاییدتون میکنیم.
Khomeini said, I demand the Iraqi army rise up against this person, Saddam Hussein, eliminate him and replace him with someone else, and we will also confirm and support you. Let's say you were Saddam. What would you do if another country was calling for your assassination and actively trying to overthrow you?
ما هو الطريق؟ القتال. القتال حتى النصر. دفاع عن الوطن وعن الشرف حتى النصر بعون الله. شو نسوي؟ نقاتل. والمقابل هو علي عنيلين. احنا ما ظل عندنا مقدمة للين. كل ما عدنا في قاموس اللين والسياسة قدمنا، فلم يبقى إلا أن نقاتل. تعجيزه هو الذي يقرب السلام. عندما يعجز يقبل بطريق السلام. والخميني عندما يدرك أنه يخسر أكثر مما يربح يقيم السلام حتى وهو حي وبقرار منه، لأن الخميني استخدم السياسة في كل ميدان، ويا الإسرائيليين استخدمها واشترى السلاح بقرار منه، ويا الأمريكان لقى عدد من المليارات لعب بقضايا الرهائن ثم أطلقهم بقرار منه، وهو سياسي.
During the war, Iraq was getting its guns from the Soviet Union, not because the USSR cared about Iraq, but because of profit. And Iran was getting a lot of its weapons from Israel, not because Israel cared about Iran, but because they had a common enemy in Saddam. They weren't just sending arms to Iran. Former Mossad case officer Viktor Ostrovsky admitted in his book The Other Side of Deception that Mossad also trained Iranian pilots during the war. Iran was engaging in all this while simultaneously yelling death to Israel. Let that sink in. Former CIA case officer Gus Stavrokotos, who was involved in Charlie Wilson's war, claimed that the Mossad had half of Iran's mullahs on its payroll before the revolution. The mullahs later went into the government, so unless they were purged, they're still there. And without a doubt, some of them are still there because that's how Iran was able to make backroom deals with Israel during the war.
Iran is Israel's best friend, and we do not intend to change our position in relation to Tehran. Believe it or not, this is a quote from an Israeli prime minister. But it's not Ben Gurion or Golda Meir from the era of the Shah. It's actually from Yitzhak Rabin. The year is 1987. Ayatollah Khomeini is still alive, and much like Ahmadinejad today, he's using the worst rhetoric against Israel. Yet, Rabin referred to Iran as a geostrategic friend. The geostrategic friend. The geostrategic friend.
In 1987, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin called Iran Israel's best friend. After the revolution, Iran cut off diplomatic relations with Israel, considered it an illegitimate state, but continued to work with them behind the scenes. Here's a 2014 article from The Telegraph titled, U.S. Investigates Illegal Military Equipment Shipments from Israel to Iran. It says, U.S. Homeland Security says Israeli arms dealers have been sending spare military jet parts to Iran in breach of sanctions. The illegal shipments are now being investigated by the U.S. Homeland Security Department after they were intercepted by authorities in Greece. A court in Athens has told The Telegraph that parts appearing on an American list of forbidden military-grade materials had been shipped from Israel on 2 occasions, apparently destined for Iran. The shipments, one in December 2012 and the other in April 2014, were sent by courier from the Israeli town of Binyamina Givat Ada near Haifa via a company in Greece, a Greek newspaper reported. The seized items comprised of spare parts for military aircraft, a constant speed drive designed for the F-4 Phantom jet, and a voltage output sensor used in the F-14 Tomcat. The parts were confiscated by Greece's financial crime squad and were being sent to the US for investigation, court officials said. In case you're skeptical, remember that roughly 30 years before this, Israel was sending Iran parts for their military jets via Europe, while Iran was simultaneously chanting, "Death to Israel." Previous illicit Israeli arms shipments to Iran have come to the public attention, notably in the 1986 Iran-Contra scandal, when it emerged that Israel was acting as a conduit to send weapons from the US to Iran in exchange for its help in winning the release of American hostages held in Lebanon. Credit to Amozi on Twitter for this next batch of research. Asadollah Asgharolati was known for being the wealthiest Iranian inside Iran until his death in 2019. His ancestors converted from Judaism to Shia Islam. According to Forbes magazine, he was the secret business partner of Israeli billionaire Mark Rich, who bypassed US sanctions and sold Iranian oil to Israel after the revolution. On the surface, they are enemies, but business continued as usual. Asadollah also owned a majority stake in 3 retail Chinese banks, and on numerous occasions proposed setting up an Iran-China bank. Now keep that in mind, you're going to understand the significance of this at the end of the video. His brother Habibullah Asgharolati was the leader of the Islamic Coalition Party, a highly influential conservative political party in Iran. He served as the Secretary of State for Social Security, Minister for Economy, Trade and Commerce, as well as heading up the Homeland Security Agency and intelligence services in Iran. He was one of God's chosen people and was a prominent member of Ayatollah Khomeini's inner circle. Saeed Imami was the Iranian Deputy Minister of Intelligence. He was appointed as Deputy Minister in Security Affairs and the second highest person of the Intelligence Ministry when he was 32 years old. He was accused of having independently organized the assassination of dissidents, known as the Chain Murders. According to the Tehran Times, he was one of God's chosen people. Nasser Makarem Shirazi is a Grand Ayatollah in Iran. He has one of the highest religious titles one can receive within the Shia sect, and his ancestors were God's chosen people. He was active in the pre-revolution days and was thrown in jail many times because of it. After the revolution, he was appointed to the Assembly of Experts for Construction and played a major role in writing the first constitution. This information is from their public profiles on Wikipedia, and some Iran fanboys will not want to believe this. That's fine. Here's the Iranian parliament building with 33 windows. It's a safe bet that God's chosen people converted to Shia Islam, were involved in the revolution, and to this day play a major role inside Iran. There is not going to be a US war with Iran. Remember when the US assassinated Soleimani, then Iran bombed US bases in Iraq? When that happened, almost every alt-media personality said that there was going to be World War III, and most of you watching this thought so too. Trump is completely controlled by Israel, and they finally had an excuse to start a war with Iran. But what did they get Trump to do? Nothing. He offered Iran peace. If Israel really wanted a war with Iran, why would Bibi make a joke out of it year after year?
And how close is Iran to getting it? Well, let me show you. Brought a diagram for you. Here's a diagram. This is a bomb. This is a fuse. Ladies and gentlemen, what I've told you now is not based on secret information. It's not based on military intelligence. It's based on the public reports of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Anybody could read them. They're online. So if these are the facts, and they are, where should a red line be drawn? A red line should be drawn right here. I just revealed something the world has never seen before. A few weeks ago, Israel obtained half a ton of Iran's secret nuclear weapons files. You want to see what that looks like? This is an exact copy of the material we got from Iran's secret atomic archive. That's over 100,000 original Iranian files and documents of blueprints for nuclear bombs, timelines for uranium enrichment, simulation of nuclear implosion, much more. This atomic archive proves one thing: Iran lied through its teeth.
The people in alt media telling you that there's going to be regime change in Iran are the same people that are calling Syria a US regime change war. These are disinformation agents who blatantly shill for the Russian government. Bibi has publicly said that he has no problem with Assad staying in power. The war started 9 years ago. If they wanted Assad dead, he would be dead. Israel and Iran are competing in Syria. Israel wants Iran's forces out of Syria. Putin has tried to get Iran to leave Syria, but they refused. Putin plays both sides, but he is more loyal to Israel, hence the time he gave Israel Iran's missile defense codes. Iran is Russia's client state, and Ali Khamenei is a trained asset, whereas Israel is basically Russia's golden child. It has completely infiltrated the US and provides Russia with all the important intelligence it wants. Without military aid from the Soviet Union, the Jews wouldn't have beaten the Arabs in '48, and without votes from the Soviet states, the State of Israel wouldn't have been created at the UN. Israel was built ground up by Bolsheviks from the Soviet Union, and they have agents at the highest levels of the Mossad. So whatever Israel steals from America ends up in the hands of Russia. That is why Putin gives preferential treatment to Israel over Iran. I know some of you are thinking, what about the sanctions? Yes, Israel has gotten the US to sanction Iran, but what has that led to? Western companies are divesting from Iran, and as a result, Chinese companies are moving in to fill the void. This is insanely beneficial for China. This particular gas field is worth trillions of dollars. China and Iran are finalizing a deal where China will invest $400 billion in Iran in exchange for increased military cooperation, weapons development, intel sharing, and China receiving discounted oil for the next 25 years. Here's an article from the Eurasian Times that says, China's $400 billion deal is a breather for Iran's economy, which is hard hit by Trump's maximum pressure campaign. Now here's an article from The Atlantic titled, The Woman at the Center of Trump's Iran Policy. Quote, John Bolton and Mike Pompeo are the public faces of the maximum pressure campaign. But the Treasury official, Sigal Mandelker, is the one actually running its most important component. And she is an Israeli. So this policy, which pushed Iran dramatically closer to China, is handled by Israel. And this is what China has always wanted. If Iran was destroyed by war, that would be completely counterproductive to communist long-term strategy. Iran and Israel are both central to China's Belt and Road Initiative, which will allow China to overtake the US as the world's leading economy. There's not going to be a full-scale war with Iran, but Zionists continue to use Iran as a paper tiger. I'll show you what I mean. One of Iran's Jewish lawmakers called Bibi an insane vampire after he told children celebrating Purim that Iran seeks to kill the Jews just as the Persians did. Throughout history, Persians saved the Jews and they've had a great relationship, so Bibi is clearly lying in order to brainwash these children. I've met Israelis and they honestly believe that Iran wants to exterminate them. Zionists need Jews to be patriotic towards Israel and be willing to move there and join the IDF. I'm not a fan of the Israelis, but they will go to extreme lengths to defend their people, and if you're in charge of a country like Bibi is, that is exactly what you want.
Bin Laden sits in Afghanistan.
There is a source
Who
of
else can you
terror.
identify, though? Because we're not saying he's responsible for this necessarily.
No, we don't say that he's responsible. This is the time to deploy a globally concerted effort led by the United States, the UK, Europe, and Russia against all sources of terror. Consistently, along 6 or 10 years, Iran, Iraq, Libya.
After 9/11, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak basically called for war with Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and Iran. Let's say you were Iran. Would you help Israel topple Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya? No, you wouldn't, because after they're gone, you're next on the chopping block. That would be like committing suicide. But Iran did go along with Israel's plan anyway in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. Why? Because they knew they could prevent a war with Israel, and that's pretty much what happened. They have deep connections with Russia, Israel, and China. When I used to see anti-Iran comments, I would dismiss them as trolls, but after my research, I realized they were actually telling the truth. Here's a tweet from Zani who sums this up perfectly. Quote, "To put it this way, Iran is full of talk, lacking any practical solutions other than taking their fanboys a ride with their boring cliche Mike Bar Israel threats since the bastardized revolution sprung out of Satan's womb, killing more Muslims than ever. Fuck them and Israel." End quote. Iran opposes Israel, but has worked with them against Sunni powers in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and even supported Russia's bombing campaign of Sunnis in Chechnya. Iran is very vocal about Muslim causes, and as a result, a lot of gullible people think they actually care about them. The Iranians are not Sunnis, they are Shias. And in case you haven't realized, they're not Arabs, they are Persians and Jews. They have no reason to be loyal to most of the Muslim world. Think hard about what Scott Ritter says in this next clip.
This is a ray of hope, the silver lining in the cloud. What a Revolutionary Guard guy said, why don't you Americans realize that we hate Arabs more than we hate the Israelis, and that we'd rather work with Israel to contain Arab power than to work with the Arabs to contain Israeli power.
There's a long history, you know, of that.
Yeah, I know, but we don't recognize that. We again, because of our ignorance, we go Muslim. They're all the same. They're not all the same.